What happens when a homeless boy finds a wallet filled with $10,000 and makes the decision to return it? You won't believe the unexpected reaction from its owner. Alex had always been a survivor. A homeless boy at just 15. He had known the streets better than any other child his age. The winter winds had begun to pick up, and Alex found himself tucked into the corner of an alleyway, his worn coat doing little to protect him from the biting cold. It was a difficult life, but Alex never lost his sense of hope. He had dreams, even if they seemed impossible in the situation he found himself in. His greatest desire was to one day have a stable job, perhaps as a mechanic, and live a life where he wasn't constantly struggling to survive. His days consisted of searching for food, finding safe places to sleep, and avoiding dangerous situations. But through it all, Alex remained kind-hearted. It wasn't uncommon for him to offer his meager food to other homeless individuals or help someone in need, even if it meant sacrificing something for himself. His integrity and sense of right and wrong never wavered. Little did he know, his life was about to take an unexpected turn. One cold morning, while rummaging through discarded items in a nearby park, Alex found something unusual, something that didn't belong. Half buried in the snow, a black leather wallet gleamed under the weak sunlight. Curiosity piqued. Alex carefully picked it up. The weight of it in his hands was surprising. Opening it, he found not just a few bills but $10,000 in cash. His heart raced. This was a fortune, a sum of money that could change his life. The temptation was strong. With $10,000, he could buy food for weeks, secure a place to stay, and perhaps even escape the harsh realities of street life. For a brief moment, Alex entertained the thought of keeping it. He could finally experience comfort, relief from the constant struggle. But as he stared at the money, something inside him told him that wasn't the right choice. His conscience wouldn't allow him to keep it. There was a name on an ID card in the wallet. It was the one clue that might lead him back to its rightful owner. Despite the cold, despite the hunger, Alex made the decision. He would return it. What would the owner of such a fortune say to a homeless boy who returned it? Alex didn't waste any time. He walked through the city, keeping the wallet carefully tucked away in his jacket pocket. His mind raced with the possibilities. Who could the wallet belong to? It had to be someone wealthy, someone who could afford such a large sum of money. His thoughts wandered to the people he saw walking by every day. The rich, the influential, those who never had to worry about survival. Yet, Alex was determined. No matter who owned the wallet, he wouldn't keep it. After hours of searching, Alex finally arrived at a towering building with a sleek glass entrance. The name on the door read, Gordon Wells, CEO. Alex's heart sank. It was a name he recognized. Gordon Wells was a successful businessman, the kind of person Alex never imagined would cross paths with him. But here he was, standing in front of Anne's office, ready to do what was right. With shaking hands, Alex entered the building. The receptionist looked at him with mild suspicion. Alex explained that he had found a wallet and wanted to return it to the owner. The receptionist seemed hesitant, but agreed to direct him to the CEO's office. As Alex stood there, he felt a mix of nervousness and determination. What would the CEO of such a powerful company think of him, a homeless boy, showing up with his lost wallet? The moment Alex stepped into the office, he was met with an unexpected warmth. Gordon Wells, the CEO, wasn't the cold and distant figure Alex had imagined. Instead, he was a man in his mid-40s, wearing a sharp suit that spoke of his success. However, his eyes held a sadness, a weariness that Alex hadn't expected. Gordon greeted Alex with a quiet smile as he held out the wallet, explaining how he had found it. "Thank you for bringing it back," Gordon said, his voice calm but sincere. Most people wouldn't have done that. Alex looked at the man, not quite sure how to respond. His actions had been simple, just returning what wasn't his. But for Gordon, this small act of honesty seemed to have a profound effect. As Gordon opened the wallet and confirmed the money was intact, something remarkable happened. Instead of offering Alex a reward, as Alex had feared, Gordon simply looked at him with an expression of gratitude and understanding. "You've reminded me of something," Gordon said quietly, almost to himself. Alex stood there, puzzled. He had expected anger or disbelief, but instead he saw a flicker of something more personal in Gordon's eyes. As the days passed after Alex returned the wallet, he found himself in an unexpected situation. Gordon Wells, the wealthy businessman, had become something of a mentor to him. Gordon wasn't someone Alex would have ever imagined befriending, but their initial interaction had led to a bond that neither of them could ignore. Gordon had invited Alex to visit his office, and from that moment on, their conversations deepened, uncovering sides of each other that no one had seen before. Gordon's demeanor had softened since their first meeting. No longer the hard, stoic businessman, he now took the time to listen to Alex's story. Alex, in turn, began to share more than just his struggles on the streets. He revealed the hardship of losing his parents, how he had grown up in foster care, and how he had never known the warmth of a real family. It was clear that both men had experienced loss, albeit in very different ways. Alex had always believed in doing the right thing, no matter the consequences. But hearing Gordon's story of regret and loneliness made him realize how much of life was defined by the choices people made and the relationships they formed. The way Gordon spoke about his younger brother Tom, whom he lost in an accident years ago, struck a chord with Alex. The pain in Gordon's voice when he described their last argument before Tom's death was palpable. Alex, who had never experienced a family bond like that, understood the magnitude of Gordon's loss. There was something about Gordon's sorrow that made Alex want to help him find peace. But Alex was also conflicted. He was still living on the streets, and the temptations of wealth and success constantly lurked in the background. Was he helping Gordon because it was the right thing to do? Or was he trying to escape the painful realities of his own life? As their conversations continued, Gordon began to take a more active role in Alex's life. He didn't just offer him advice, he started offering opportunities. Gordon insisted that Alex take some time off from his street life and stay at one of his properties, a lavish apartment in the heart of the city. For Alex, it was a surreal offer. He had never imagined he would be living in such luxury, even if just for a short while. But it wasn't about the material comfort. It was the trust Gordon placed in him. Alex took the offer, albeit reluctantly. It felt strange to live in such opulence when he had been living in a rundown alley just days earlier. But Gordon had asked him to do it. He wanted Alex to see life from a different perspective. This new environment opened Alex's eyes to the vast disparity between his life and the lives of the wealthy. Yet, despite all the luxury around him, Alex couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. He hadn't come this far just to live in a gilded cage. Gordon, on the other hand, was beginning to heal. Slowly, he started to let go of his bitterness over the loss of his brother. The daily talks with Alex helped him process feelings he had buried for years. What Alex had unknowingly provided Gordon with was not just a friendship, but a chance at redemption. Their bond, though unlikely, had become a way for both of them to heal from their respective wounds. Gordon also noticed a quiet strength in Alex that he admired. Despite everything Alex had been through, he still held on to his principles. He hadn't let the world break him, even when it seemed like the world was against him. And in that, Gordon saw something familiar. He had once been like Alexa boy with a bright future before it all fell apart. Days turned into weeks, and Alex's life began to change in ways he never thought possible. He had adjusted to his new lifestyle, finding a rhythm in the luxury apartment that felt foreign yet comforting. But despite the comfort, Alex couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was still living a life detached from his true self. The wealth and elegance surrounding him seemed almost meaningless when compared to the bond he was beginning to form with Gordon. In those quiet moments, as the city lights flickered from his high-rise window, Alex started reflecting more on his past. He hadn't been entirely honest with Gordon about how he had ended up on the streets. He had hinted at it, but there was so much more. His life hadn't been shaped solely by hardship. It was also filled with mistake zones he wished he could take back. One particular evening, as Gordon joined him for a quiet dinner at the apartment, Alex finally opened up about the pain he had carried for so long. He spoke of his decision to leave his hometown as a teenager, running away after an argument with his parents. The argument had been over something trivial at the time, but it was the catalyst that set everything else in motion. He regretted not making amends, but the shame of his choices had always kept him from returning. Gordon listened intently, not offering advice, but simply being there. It was in that moment that Alex realized he had been searching for a father figure all along. He didn't need a mentor to teach him how to make money or climb the social ladder. He needed someone who could guide him emotionally, someone who understood the weight of loss. For Gordon, hearing Alex's story struck a deep chord. The more Alex shared, the more Gordon understood how similar their journeys had been. Despite their vast differences in wealth and status, they were both driven by feelings of abandonment. Gordon's life had been filled with promises that fell short, while Alex's had been shaped by broken dreams and missed opportunities. As their relationship evolved, Gordon started making more personal requests of Alex, the kind of requests that only someone with real trust would make. One afternoon, Gordon asked Alex to visit a nearby charity that he had been funding for years. It was a shelter for homeless children, a place Gordon had been secretly supporting for a long time. He wanted Alex to experience it firsthand, not just as a donor, but as someone who could relate to the children there. The shelter was filled with kids of all ages, all of whom had their own stories of hardship. Some were orphans, others had been abandoned, and a few were victims of abuse. But despite the trauma they had endured, there was a sense of community among them. Alex immediately connected with the children, especially a young boy named Tyler, who reminded him so much of his younger self. Gordon observed the interaction from a distance, a look of admiration in his eyes. He hadn't known Alex for long, but he could already see the strength in him. It wasn't about the money or the luxuries anymore. It was about the relationships, the connections, and the ability to heal through helping others. This experience marked a turning point for Alex. He began to realize that his connection to Gordon was not just about repaying the kindness of a stranger, but about finding his own purpose. He could use his past struggles to help others, and maybe, just maybe, he could find peace by paying forward the kindness he had received. As the weeks passed, Alex started to notice a shift in himself. His initial apprehension about wealth and the life that came with it began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of responsibility. Gordon's mentorship was invaluable, but Alex was slowly beginning to see that the greatest change came from his desire to give back. For the first time, he was feeling connected, not just to Gordon, but to the world around him. He began to volunteer regularly at the shelter, working with the kids and learning their stories. It became a routine that grounded him. But there was still a looming question in the back of his mind. What about his own family? The parents he hadn't seen in years, the ones he had left behind so recklessly. Every time he volunteered, every time he saw the children's faces light up from the smallest act of kindness, it reminded him of the emptiness he had been carrying in his own life. One evening, after a long day of volunteering, Alex sat with Gordon in the living room of his apartment. As they talked, the conversation shifted back to Alex's family. Gordon, sensing the weight of Alex's silence, asked a question he had been careful not to bring up before. "Have you ever thought about going back?" Alex froze. The thought had crossed his mind countless times, but had always been too overwhelming to act on. His parents had been disappointed, angry, and worried when he left. He had no idea how they would react after all these years. Would they even want to see him? The guilt he carried was unbearable. Gordon, however, didn't give up. He encouraged Alex to think about the future, about the opportunity to reconcile, and to let go of the past. "It's never too late," Gordon said, his voice gentle but firm. "You've already shown that you are willing to help others. Don't let your own family be the one thing you regret." For the first time, Alex felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to mend the relationship with his parents. The more Alex thought about it, the more he realized that it was time to face the truth. He couldn't keep running from his past, not when everything in his present had changed so drastically. But he still struggled with the fear of rejection. The possibility that his parents might not want him back haunted him, and it kept him up at night. But Gordon's words lingered in his mind, and he knew deep down that it was time to act. The next step was terrifying yet empowering. Alex decided to write a letter. He didn't know exactly what to say, but he poured his heart into it. He wrote about his regrets, his desire for reconciliation, and his wish to rebuild the bridge he had burned all those years ago. He included his contact information, hoping against hope that his parents would see the sincerity in his words. Once the letter was sealed and sent off, Alex felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had done something. He had taken the first step towards healing, not only for himself but for the family he had left behind. In the meantime, Gordon continued to support him, offering guidance and words of encouragement. He could see the change in Alex's demeanor, how he had become more self-assured, more willing to open up, and more committed to the work they had started together. But he also knew that Alex's journey wasn't complete until he confronted his past. And as the days passed, Alex waited. His heart raced with anticipation, unsure of how the letter would be received. Would his parents even respond? Or would his actions have been in vain? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but there was nothing more he could do except wait for the call that could change everything. The tension in Alex's life had been steadily building. After sending the letter to his parents, the uncertainty and anxiety of not knowing what would happen next weighed heavily on him. It had been 2 weeks since he had sent it, and despite his attempts to remain calm, he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that this could either be a turning point or the end of any hope for reconciliation. One rainy afternoon, while Alex was at the shelter with the children, his phone buzzed in his pocket. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the name on the screen. Mom. His hand trembled as he answered the call, unsure of what to expect. Was this a moment of healing, or a harsh reminder of the past he'd hoped to leave behind? The conversation began quietly, awkwardly. His mother's voice was shaky, as if she were trying to find the right words. She asked him how he was doing, about his work, and about his life. There was a long silence before she spoke again. Alex, we've thought a lot about your letter. Alex's breath hitched, his throat tightened, and he struggled to swallow. Was this the moment of reckoning? Would she tell him she never wanted to see him again, or would there be a chance for healing? I am not sure how to say this, his mother continued, her voice cracking. Your father and I, we've both been angry for a long time, but we never stopped loving you. We just didn't know how to fix things. And now, well, I think we're ready to try. Tears welled up in Alex's eyes as he stood in the middle of the shelter, surrounded by children who had no idea of the emotional storm brewing inside him. In that moment, something shifted within him, a flood of relief, of joy, and of gratitude for this second chance he had longed for. His mother continued, We don't know where to start, but we want to. We want to see you. Alex felt as though the weight of years of regret had suddenly been lifted from his chest. His mother's words were not just a reconciliation. They were a bridge back to the family he had abandoned. He could hardly believe it was happening. All the uncertainty, the doubt, the guilt, it all seemed to vanish in that moment. But the true test had yet to come. His parents had extended an olive branch, but would Alex be able to forgive himself for all the years he had spent away? Would he be able to embrace the future with them, knowing that the past could never be undone? Gordon, sensing the monumental shift in Alex's life, took him aside later that evening. He had been a silent observer to the journey Alex had been on, but now he was a mentor ready to guide him through this next chapter. This is just the beginning, Alex, Gordon said, his voice calm and reassuring. What you do next is what defines who you'll become. Don't rush. Take your time. Alex nodded, though his emotions were still raw. The idea of going back to his parents felt both surreal and overwhelming. But he knew he could not let this opportunity slip away. His heart had been awakened to the possibility of reconciliation, and it was a chance he couldn't let go of. That night, Alex sat alone in his apartment, reflecting on everything he had learned. He thought about his past, about the boy he once was, and about the man he had become. He had made mistakes, many of them, but he was no longer defined by those mistakes. He was defined by the choices he made today. The next morning, Alex called his mother back. He told her he was ready to see them, to start anew. The road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but Alex was no longer afraid of the unknown. His journey had come full circle, from a boy with nothing to a man ready to reclaim the family he had lost. The following days were filled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Alex felt as though he was standing on the edge of something monumental. He had made the decision to reconnect with his parents, but he still wasn't sure what that meeting would feel like. His heart raced every time he thought about it. Meanwhile, at the shelter, things were beginning to shift as well. Alex found himself more energized, more connected to the children he had been working with. He knew that his decision to change things with his family would have a ripple effect on his life. and that included his work at the shelter. He met with Gordon again, this time to discuss what the future might look like for the shelter. With the support he was about to receive from his parents, Alex was beginning to dream big. What if he could expand the shelter? What if he could create a safe space for even more children who needed help? There was so much possibility now, and Alex felt ready to take on the challenge. As he spent time with the kids, he could see how they were impacted by his newfound sense of hope. They looked up to him, admired him, and it made Alex feel like he was living his purpose. For the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. But despite everything, the moment of truth loomed. He was about to meet his parents for the first time in years. Would it be everything he had hoped for? Or would it end in disappointment? The meeting was set for the weekend, and Alex's nerves reached a fever pitch as the day approached. The day arrived. Alex stood in front of his parents' home, staring at the large, imposing door. His hands were clammy, his heart racing. Everything had led to this moment, the culmination of his journey of self-discovery and healing. He had no idea how this would unfold, but he knew one thing. He was no longer the same person who had walked away all those years ago. When his parents opened the door, the years of silence between them melted away. His mother's face was filled with emotion, her eyes welling with tears. His father, though quieter, extended his hand with an expression of unspoken love and regret. It was as if time had stopped for a moment. All the pain, all the misunderstandings were suddenly put aside. They embraced, cautiously at first, but then with a warmth that felt genuine. The years apart melted away in those few seconds. Alex finally felt like he belonged again, like he had come home. He had been searching for so long, but now he understood that healing didn't happen overnight. It happened through small, intentional steps, through reconciliation and vulnerability. As they sat down together, Alex's parents shared their side of the story, their guilt, their fears, and their own struggles. For the first time in years, they were all able to speak openly, honestly, without the weight of resentment. It was a healing process, and it was far from perfect, but it was real. Alex could feel the weight of the burden lifting from his shoulders. In this moment, he wasn't alone. He had his family, and he had a future full of potential. His heart swelled with gratitude, not just for the reconciliation, but for the growth he had experienced along the way. The following months were transformative for Alex. His relationship with his parents, once filled with distance and unspoken pain, had blossomed into something real. Though the road to full reconciliation wasn't without its bumps, Alex and his parents were determined to rebuild what had been broken. They spent holidays together, shared family meals, and began to understand each other in ways they never had before. Alex's focus on the shelter never wavered. With his newfound support from his parents, he managed to secure donations that allowed him to expand the space and provide even more resources to the children who needed it most. He felt a deep sense of purpose every time he walked into the shelter, seeing the kids thrive and know that they were being given a chance to build a better life for themselves. Alex continued to work with Gordon, strengthening their partnership and dreaming of future projects. The shelter's reach began to grow, and soon it wasn't just a place to live. It was a full-service resource hub for children and families in need. Education programs, job training, and even health services were offered. And through it all, Alex's personal transformation was just as profound. He was no longer the homeless, isolated boy who had once found a wallet filled with money. He was a man who had found a sense of community, purpose, and, most importantly, family. As he sat in his office one evening, gazing out at the children playing in the yard, Alex thought back to that fateful day when he had found the wallet. If he hadn't made that choice to return it, to act out of integrity instead of desperation, none of this would have happened. He wouldn't have found his parents, or this incredible opportunity to help others. The connections he had made, both personal and professional, had changed the course of his life. Alex had always believed that everything in life happened for a reason, but it wasn't until now that he truly understood the depth of that belief. As he walked through the shelter, interacting with the kids and staff who had become like family, he realized that life's greatest rewards often come from the most unexpected places. Through the ups and downs, Alex had learned that success wasn't just about financial gain or professional accolades. True success was about the lives you touched, the connections you made, and the people you loved and cared for along the way. Alex had found a new sense of peace, one that came from within. The insecurities, the struggles, and the loneliness that had defined his earlier years were no longer part of his story. Instead, he had rewritten his narrative of resilience, compassion, and hope. As the sun set on another successful day at the shelter, Alex sat down with his parents to share a quiet dinner. The warmth of the meal reflected the warmth in his heart. He had everything he needed, and more than he could have ever imagined. With his parents by his side, his work with the shelter thriving, and the love of a community that supported him, Alex had found the kind of happiness that transcended material wealth. In the final moments of the story, as Alex looks around at the world he's built, he reflects, "Sometimes, the most incredible transformations don't come from where we expect them, but from the choices we make when we least expect it."